Good, Joy. I am a journalist. Recently, I have been to Jonglei and to Upper Nile and Unity State as a journalist doing my work. And I found that as we talk today, the trees that have been in the water for the last 3 years, they are dry up, they are falling down. People in the communities have been displaced to concentration areas. And for that reason, the small trees that are in those small areas and the animals that are supposed to be in the bush are together with them in those places. So the ecosystem is really mixed up and things are dying. Is there any research that the Ministry of Environment has carried out in the last 3 years in places like Fangak, Ayod, and Bentiu that we can be given and seeing what is the alternative that we can see for those people here? Because for us, we are even confused as journalists on what to tell people. When you go to ground, the information that they are telling us are really very. The same question is I will ask to Peter from the environment, from the UN environment, that has there been any research that apart from the global, the Google and the images online, was there any research that the UN environment has carried out in those areas for the last 3 years, and alternative that was given so that we can also help those on those locations to give them education on where to go? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Matui John, a student journalist from the University of Cuba. My question goes direct to Mr. Peter. Based on your assessment of the Sudd wetland, apart from dredging the Nile tributaries, what are the other possible measures the government of South Sudan should take to do away with flooding? Thank you.
I'm called Kenjijan Pasimba. I just want to understand one thing. In the social media, the public are saying the dredging is going on, but it's under cover. We would like to know, is there dredging going on, or what is it? And it also seems like the Ministry of Environment and Water Resources are not coordinating their work. What is exactly happening between these two ministries? The Ministry of Environment seems to be opposing the initiative of the Ministry of Water Resources and Education. Can we know something about that?
Okay. You start, then
Okay, very quickly, let me just go very quickly. So first of all, on the inconsistency of maps, let me explain very clearly. Through my work with UNEP, we've always had the issue of inconsistency of maps, and we always follow the UN Cartographic Division, which is under the law department of the UN in terms of national boundary. And you'll always find that disclaimer in the maps that are produced by the UN. So for example, in the Abyei region, you find sometimes it looks like it's sitting in Sudan, and sometimes it looks like it's sitting in South Sudan. But the UN is very neutral. Whatever has been agreed in the law environment of the UN, it follows. That's point number one. You had asked about more technocrats in the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, needing more technocrats. Fine, but remember, technocrats will never give you 100% of the decision. It's just what you need to have the science at the table. Politics will be there, policy will be there, but make sure that science is at the table to inform. Let the politicians make their decision. And again, the ministry was not talking about preserving the jungle. She did, I think, like you say, she was making a mistake that she meant the Sudd environment. And it's never, I mean, remember, I'm retired now from UN. I was a director there and I spoke very much on behalf of United Nations Environment Program, but as a consultant, I cannot do that. But in general, my experience is that UNEP will never dictate, tell the government of South Sudan what to do. That's your decision. All we can do is try to make sure that credible science is at the table, and that's why I think you requested us to support you, if I'm not mistaken. People who split trees, any research, I think that was from our journalists. And any research in those areas, any education, UNEP has not done any field research in those areas, certainly to my knowledge, and maybe Nicholas has a different information. But most of the work that has been done, for example, there's some field work done with the State of the Environment report, which we remember very well. I remember we went to Palowitz to look at the oil pollution question. We got on, we got off the plane. For some reason, the papers were not correct. We had to get on the plane and come back. There's always a sensitivity of the environment in terms of how the oil industry is impacting the environment, and it's a very sensitive question here. Again, our experiences, we were not able to do some of the initial surveys in the Palowitz region because of the paperwork not being correct, the way I understand it. Then our student here asked about dredging or not, what else can be done? And I guess, again, it's the government of South Sudan a decision. You're the ones who make the decision, and I think you alluded to it, Joseph. You said, don't just look at this little piece of the picture, right, in terms of whether it's dredging. You have to understand what are our ambitions in the long term, whether it's, are you going to use irrigation agriculture? Is that part of your future? Hydroelectric sounds like. Flooding control must be there, but protecting the ecosystem services are most important. You have a variety of solutions that are available, whether it's the Jonglei Canal, Nimule Reservoir, dredging, diking. You have combinations of solutions that are available to you. It's not just any single solution. And again, but make sure that science is on the table so that you understand how these different solutions could fit or not fit together in function of where you want to be in your 5-year, your 10-year growth period. You're a young nation, you've got the resources. Use them to the best of your ability, and don't think in the short term, but always think in the long term. And generally in my life, I find that when I think for the long term, things work out. You continue to plan for the future. And then any actual dredging, I think I'll let you handle that one, Mr. Undersecretary. Thank you.
Okay, to the best of my knowledge, unless we need also to get some satellite imageries, the dredging is not started. But the equipment, which is the barges and the tugboat, have arrived there. And they're expecting to get the excavators via Mombasa. Now you brought the issue of the contradiction between us and the Minister of Water Resources. Actually, what we are doing, we are asserting our mandate. Any environment line ministry or any ministry that needs to have some developmental projects, there is a cardinal thing, international best practice. If you are going to move earth, if you are going to do anything, you need to conduct an environmental, social impact assessment and some other studies that are related to that kind of development before you embark into that. So us as a ministry, we have experts here who are trained to conduct screening and scoping of sites, then come up with terms of reference for any other study to be conducted. Because we go, up to now, we don't know exactly which sites are supposed to be dredged. Are they, say, spawning places for fish? What are they? So from us, we request, or I requested, under Secretary, the first thing, let's try to put the genesis right. When the issue of the equipment came, I read your reporting. that the minister has received equipment. We saw pictures, and those equipments were removed. So the first thing I have to do, because it's a sensitive thing, I wrote to the Undersecretary of Water Resources and requested him to furnish us with information in the project site. Secondly, there was a presentation on the Jongole Canal Development Project that was given by the Minister of Water Resources. In that letter too, I requested the experts from the Minister of Water Resources to come to this ministry with that presentation so that we sit together as one government, have that presentation there and try to understand and try to know exactly who are the authors of that presentation, and we try to put our input in. Unfortunately, so this is the process. If there is any project, a mega project, a dam, just take, for instance, the Freedom Bridge. When they started with an environmental impact assessment, the screening and everything, and our people did that. And they went ahead and hired a consultant to conduct the environmental impact assessment of that place, the social. So they found that that location was having at least 50 households. If that bridge is going to be constructed, these 50 households will be impacted. And the Japanese are good with that. They simply said, we cannot start this project until you relocate and compensate these people. And it was done. New plots were given to them, and I think several of them were paid money in order to restart. So we knew that building that bridge will not be able to now cause a lot of social impact. But again, we did not see the design of the bridge, because now when you see it's very low, and it has now cut the southern part of the river from the northern part, simply because now boats will not be able to cross. So at least one thing that our engineers in the Ministry of Bridges should have known, that in the long run we might need to get some boats or even tourism boats to go downstream. So, but now the bridge is so low, and that is something that we have to start thinking. Maybe in the long run, that $91 million will have to be, something has to be done. Maybe in the middle there, we start to raise it up and all that kind of stuff. So it becomes a curve, like what we know about. So so these are the kind of things that needs to be done, engineering, design. So if this issue of dredging was supposed to be given to us, we simply say, okay, we'll do the screening, we'll do the scoping, we'll come up with the terms of reference, we'll know the sites exactly. Because sometimes if we go there, there are two things here. In those years, for the navigation, people were not dredging, but they were clearing the weeds and whatever. That's clearing. It's totally different from dredging. Okay? So now, dredging, you're going to do a lot of moving of the silt, soil, and you don't know what kind of ecosystems are down there, and a lot of things. So if it is just a matter of, okay, we are just going to clear, or when people say, okay, it is blocked, because nature knows what it's doing. If you leave everything to nature, it will correct itself. But the moment you simply think that you are a wise man and you just want to do things, it will come back and hurt you. But the same thing, we took fossil fuel, we burned it, we took coal, we burned. And now, temperatures, a country like France that have never experienced temperature of over 40 degrees, they have just beat it now. Okay. So what we ever do as humans, we have consequences. So that's what we are trying to say. Floods, this dredging is not going to control floods. Okay, you can dredge it, but when the water level of the Sudd raises, the same water will, instead of like flowing, coming to the Sudd, it will go back and flood everywhere. So, and again, as I said earlier, we have solutions. We can. In Libya, I think Gaddafi managed to get water through pipes, and the country is dry. We have Capoeira very dry, Nuer dry, northern Upper Nile is dry. And we have some water, but we are not supposed to go and do it because some people say, oh, let's try to take it from the Sudan. No, we're not taking it from the Sudan. We might start from Mangala. And as the Minister of Youth and Sports simply said, okay, let it go around and it will come back because we need to supply all those areas. And also the western part. And the fear that we have with this dredging, the Bahar al-Ghazal is a basin. It's a basin. Okay, so when you drain a basin, it's not coming back. And now, coupled with climate change and the variability of weather, I think we have to be conservatives. And first of all, the most important thing is water for South Sudan first. So that's what I can tell you. We are working now with water resources. The Undersecretary did send terms of reference, but I simply told him that you cannot come with the terms of reference to us. We are the ones to go, do the screening, do the scoping, and develop the terms of reference. The only thing for them is to give us the project site. Then everything will be done here. We come with the terms of reference, we agree with them, we get money, we tender it, then we get a third party that has no interest at all in this, but they are going to do soil science and what we want them to tell us with the science. But again, science is evolving, okay? You cannot simply say the science of today, tomorrow something else will come. So we'll after doing something, you can now have environmental audits annually to see whether you are following with your mitigation management plans or something like that. So these are the issues that we have. Studies. Let's be honest to ourselves. The moment there is a sound of a gun or a bullet, nobody is going to risk their lives to go to those places. Okay? So if we are going to have studies in most of these places, I think we need stability and peace. I was with UNEP from 2005 and we conducted the Sudan post-conflict environmental assessment. And it was so difficult by then. We went to the oil fields, we got all the clearance from Khartoum, from the presidency there. But the moment you arrived in the oil fields, they'll say, okay, this is it, this is that, don't look at that, don't look at this and all that. So there is something that is hidden. And the reality is, what happened to our oil fields is actually looting. Because these people knew in the long run, this country is going to be an independent country. So the oil fields were actually military barracks with gunships, with everything. So they find some Nuer villages somewhere, they come and chase them away. Dinka villages, make sure, and the most important thing is extract as much as you can. And doing that, environmental considerations were not put in place. We have requested for the initial environmental and social impact assessment for all the oil fields prior to their exploitation, and they are nowhere to be seen. Secondly, we have requested the oil companies, because in our policy and everywhere internationally, oil companies are supposed to conduct environmental and social impact assessments or audits, environmental audits, annually to know how the operations are they impacting the environment? These people have never been doing that. Now David has gone, he was here. He has gone to the Ministry of Petroleum because there are 3 firms that are going to conduct an audit. We have cleared them, and they will be conducting an audit in the oil fields. So we'll know the produced water, we'll know the chemical disposal, a lot of things. Because one story that was more touching last year, 2 years ago, was the expired chemicals that were brought. And the chemicals expired, but the Chinese, I'm not afraid to call names, okay? Because if the Minister of Environment becomes politically correct, that means we are not protecting the environment.